Stop, please. Oh!
Remember when this happened? This was not even a year after Disney gave up entirely. For a series that Disney intended to be the franchise finale, Power Rangers RPM proves the greatest in almost every faction of itself. Along the road, there was a lot of turbulence. From blowing the budget to late scripts, story changes, we're talking about the full history of Power Rangers RPM and how Disney canceled it before it could even start. Ready?
Everybody morph now! Ready? Ready! We're talking about...
In 2001, Disney purchased Fox Family for $3 billion, which also means that they took on the debt that they owed, which was $2.3 billion. What an L. At the time, Saban Entertainment, the company behind the creation of Power Rangers, owned half of Fox. This in turn meant that Disney would now be the owners of Power Rangers from then forward. Although this went into effect towards the end of Power Rangers Wild Force, 2003's Power Rangers Ninja Storm would be recognized as the first series of the show to be fully produced by Disney. Disney moved the show's filming to New Zealand, and across the next 5 to 6 years, the corporation would pick up where Saban left off, putting out a new series every year as if nothing were different, including Dino Thunder, SPD, and more. Power Rangers always had a certain stigma around it, and concerns thrown around surrounding its nature. Moms and many other big groups often lambasted it for its violence, refusing to allow their kids watch it and demanding the franchise be ended. Being that Disney continued the show immediately following the purchase, these complaints would follow, and in some cases even worse considering who was now in charge. Yeah, good one, Michael. Alongside this, there were other things brewing. Mostly rumors that Disney wanted more control over how Power Rangers was handled and the money collected from the property compared to what Toei would receive. However, this has never been outright confirmed. What does appear to have levels of truth, however, is the financial cost of the series. After a while, Disney would decide to drastically dial back on the budget of each individual season, much to the ire of the producers. This infamously led to the Omega Ranger in 2005's Power Rangers SPD, in which the show was unable to hire an actor to play the character in person on screen due to the lack of budget, leading to the Omega Ranger only appearing fully morphed and by voice only. All of this coupled with the violence complaints eventually became too much, with some saying Disney themselves seemed somewhat embarrassed to even be associated with the brand. Former series writer Eddie Guzlian, I hope I'm saying your name right. I really, I'm sorry. Former series writer Eddie Guzlian saying, "It's a complicated issue. I really can't explain Disney's attitude towards the show, but I can definitely from personal experience attest that they act ashamed to be producing it." By the end of 2007's Power Rangers Jungle Fury, Disney was done with the franchise. Bandai, the master toy licensee of the franchise, did their best and persuaded them to continue on in order to keep sales flowing, also offering to help fund the new season itself. But in reality, Disney was actually in a deal, and they had to make the next season. Like they didn't have a choice. In the following year, Power Rangers RPM would be announced, with the show's producers outright stating that no new series would follow after.
We went into it knowing everybody knew that this was the last season. That this was going to be the last season. Disney was done with it. It changed it. I know Eddie basically went into it, took on the role of executive producer. Maybe they don't care about it so much. I can either really try and make it something great, or I can just, coast and get it through. And that's why he really went out on a limb and went, right, I'm just going to try and do something completely different.
In 2009, Bandai would put out a press release stating that Disney would air a slightly reimagined version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers rather than producing a brand new series as per usual. In a way, Disney themselves canceled the Power Rangers franchise before RPM could even begin. Let me put things into perspective. Before 2009, Power Rangers would find its home in ABC Family and Toon Disney and/or Jetix primarily. RPM aired on a shoved-off ABC Kids channel with little to no promotion at all, and being 10 at the time, I had no idea Power Rangers was even airing.
Power Rangers RPM, premiering next Saturday on ABC Kids.
Now, is it just me, or do I rock?
I'd catch it here and there, but never fully enough to register what was going on. It was strange because despite this, my brother and I were fully aware that Power Rangers was still happening elsewhere. That year, my parents took us to the store where we found the morphers. I took home the engine cell morpher, and he got the cell shift morpher. Shift cell, whatever, never mind. We held on to those for years, as well as other RPM figures, but almost never caught the show when it was on. It wasn't until years later with the Shout Factory full series DVD set that I'd get to fully appreciate it for what it is.
Where do you get your spandex?
That is not spandex. The material is a self-assembling nano.
Power Rangers RPM is the story of a city in a post-apocalyptic world completely domed off and sheltered from the evil Vengex, an escaped virus created in a lab by the series commander, Dr. K. The show's military uses its force to protect those still living, alongside a team of Power Rangers, also constructed by Dr. K. The story would be fully set up and supervised by a writer formerly versed in older Disney titles, Eddie Guzlian. I really hope I'm saying your name right. If you're watching this, please reach out to me. In a 2009 interview with Ranger Crew regarding the series, Guzlian would state, "The very first meeting I ever had with Disney on the show, they told me flat out that Jungle Fury was supposed to have been the final season of Power Rangers. I don't remember the circumstances exactly, but something involving foreign financing or issues with the toy company had already begun moving forward and put them in a position of being obligated to go ahead with the RPM season." Having never written for Power Rangers, Guzlian was told by Disney to write something that would appeal to older audiences, and to do something with the show that would set it apart from past seasons. Although he'd enjoyed the source material, Engine Sentai go-onger, he ultimately decided that the googly-eyed talking Zords and silly nature of the original show would not work with what he'd been instructed.
The front of our Zords.
They're optical field scanning sensors for your cockpit's A2D display.
They look like eyes. Big, googly anime eyes.
Guzlian opted to take things in his own direction, creating a desolate world in which the domed city housed the only remaining humans on the planet. It's up to them to put an end to the Vengex virus and keep humanity thriving. Quote, "Because it was the final season of the show, the executives at Disney pushed me to shoot for something that was ambitious. They told me to swing for the fences and often reminded me that because the show was essentially already cancelled, I had nothing to lose." End quote. Reality would set in quickly as Eddie attempted to find ways of incorporating the Japanese footage with the new things he could come up with. Ari Boyland, the actor who played Flynn, the Blue Ranger, would state during panels that originally, due to his Japanese counterpart having not much to do in the original series, Guzlian wasn't sure what to make of Flynn's character. He was told to come in and do whatever he wanted, and the character at one point was almost going to be mute entirely.
There was a very brief period of time where my character could have been mute. Eddie very nicely in the audition process, like we did a couple of different accents, and he's like, "Okay, cool. Like you got like a 3-page scene with dialogue." He's like, "Okay, I just want to try something. Just do this scene again, but just do it without saying anything. Like act out all of these lines, but just don't say anything."
How did you do it?
However, even with these slight hiccups, Guzlian would put his all into the characters, attempting to give them each a full episode titled to that Ranger, explaining their backstory while coupled with present-day events. In the episode Ranger Red, we learn that our Red Ranger, Scott Truman, is felt left out and unappreciated by his father, entrusting important actions to his older son only, who eventually would lose his life in an air battle. Scott longs to not only protect the planet leading his team, but also earn the respect of his father. In Ranger Yellow, Summer is shown to come from a wealthy family, but once the world is under attack, she's forced to humble herself, and decides to join the force and become a ranger after a man who once cared for her is lost in the fight. Red, blue, yellow, green, and black each have a significant amount of time poured into their backstories that flesh them out without feeling overbearing. Villain Tanaya, being a blind girl torn away from her brother in a kidnapping and forcibly turned into a cyborg, is tragic and well written to tug at your heart. The story of Dr. K and what she went through, alongside our Ranger series Gold and Silver, Gem and Gemma, was so well executed that it became my favorite plotline of the series and made Dr. K my favorite character overall in the Power Rangers franchise.
What about Ziggy?
Its morph signal has gone dead. Would you suggest I go door to door?
She's as bad as the machines.
Power Rangers is known for filming its own original scenes with actors, sets, and original fights both in and out of the colorful suits, while also using many clips and segments of stock footage from the original Super Sentai series it's being based on. However, what stands out most about RPM is the sheer amount of original footage filmed exclusively for RPM, rather than being picked from the source material Engine Sentai go-onger. Aside from the Megazord battles and footage, the shots you'll see from go-onger is almost slim to none. A good 85% of footage you'll see with just about every passing episode was filmed in New Zealand for Power Rangers. Out of every season of the show up to this point, RPM proved to be the most different, and that it is nothing at all like its Super Sentai counterpart. Eddie Guzlian took advantage of the amazing stunt team and cast of actors to do things the franchise had never done before. Most importantly, poking fun at not only the original Super Sentai series, but the entire tokusatsu genre as a whole, an absurd amount of times.
You cruise around in a giant yellow teddy bear, okay? I drive a big green fish. Look in the mirror, people. We're in no position to be sitting in judgment of anything weird.
This would include jabs at the costumes, insulting the fact that some monsters would literally just be a spray bottle with legs, and he'd even incorporate his own initial reaction to the Zords from go-onger. Can I talk about my favorite instance of this real quick? Okay, throughout the Disney era of Power Rangers, it became very common for the Rangers to end their morph sequence, each striking their specific pose with some sort of pyrotechnic or flashy effect going off in the background. The same would be the case with RPM.
There! See that explosion? I'm telling you, that was just a little one.
The 10th episode, Ranger Blue, a reversal glitch interferes with Flynn's main abilities, prompting Dr. K to shut him offline. Later on, Flynn comes up with the idea of reversing the glitch by inserting his engine cell into the morpher upside down to create a runoff explosion so big it links him back to the morphin grid and breaks the issue entirely.
No, let's finish this. No, wait.
Guzlian would flesh his characters and story out as much as possible, all the way up to his final episode writing near the end of the series. Oh yeah, did I mention he was fired by Disney? The official reasoning for why has never quite been clear, but there has been mention of episode scripts being untimely and going over budget a few times. However, miscommunication from Disney could also be a big factor. None of the executives I worked for have ever stepped up to give any real explanation to myself or to my agent of what happened or exactly why I was removed from the show. It's a complicated issue involving the politics of a long-running show, money, and a host of other factors that I honestly do not fully understand. Nevertheless, after Eddie was canned, former series writer Chip Lynn would step in his place, being that Disney and staff never asked Guzlian for his input on how he'd have wanted the show to progress and end. Many plot lines that had their story beats set up for the spike were left falling to the ground as Chip went on his own way. This includes a possible plot line following the reveal that Flynn's father was once the RPM Blue Ranger. And according to the actress behind Tenaya, Adelaide Kane, her character was at one point supposed to gain her own morpher and join the team.
I've only ever had good things to say about Eddie, and when Chip came in, we didn't get a background episode, so...
Well, the only reason the show was as dark as it was and was so unusual is because Eddie had creative control before Chip came in, and I'm not going to bandy about or beat around the bush. Like, I'm an Eddie stan, 110%, and the changeover was very, very difficult for me personally, and I would have gotten my morpher.
A certain set of episodes became somewhat more flat and to the point, based mainly on retrieving new Zords at points and staying focused on one single objective with little character interaction. Multiple episodes to which most of the shots are comprised of the Rangers like this, huddled around Dr. K listening and nothing else. And even an episode in which Big Baddie, Shifter, has control over Scott for all of 1 minute, attacking no one, and the issue being resolved not even halfway through the runtime, leading to a big battle that ends in a helmetless shot for no reason at all. The change, while not frustrating, is very noticeable. Despite this, RPM would continue on with the notion that it was indeed still intended to be the franchise finale, even relegating an entire episode to being a behind-the-scenes special, highlighting the choreography, delving into the special effects and how they're executed, and a blooper reel, all while the characters are still in actor. Wow. All while the actors are still in character. It's fascinating that even with the show being Disney's last stand with the suited heroes, that through this episode they at multiple points make it very clear how safe the production is when it comes to its violence. Characters like Scott and Summer have lines flat out stating that they are very careful and that everything is meticulously planned out before anything goes into play. What also took me aback was how symbolic this episode ended up being. The only behind-the-scenes episode in Power Rangers history, as well as the only one to highlight the hard work and dedication put into something like this, and it's during this series that was meant to cease production of the franchise as a whole after it was over. This is an actual quote from Ika Darville, RPM's Red Ranger Scott Truman, during the episode. What makes Power Rangers unique, you ask? It's not just our moves, it's the camera's moves. Moving the camera adds to the excitement and fuels the energy. We also add music, special effects, props, and some good old acrobatics. You put them together and you have the most exciting stunt sequences on television. Hey, let's watch.
Get in gear!
Power Rangers RPM would air on ABC Kids throughout 2009 with little to no promotion at all, almost as if Disney didn't even want people knowing that the show was coming. They even decided not to put out a press release regarding its announcement while Bandai themselves did. Regardless of the outcome, RPM would immediately become adored by fans, praising its turn away from how Power Rangers normally goes throughout its stories. Some call it dark. I tend to, it's kind of dark. Anyways, I tend to call it refreshing. It's different. It's the exact sort of kick in the face the show needed from someone who ended up being the only one that could do it. RPM is a must-watch, not just for its score, not just for its characters or its plot lines, but for its heart and ambition. Will you get in gear?
Time to find out how much stronger Vengeance really is.
You know what my favorite dynamic on the show was that was real funny, that kind of went into but then didn't, was Flynn and Gemma like kind of starting this thing.
Yeah.
And then Jem getting this real creepy, jealous vibe on.
That's
like,
right.
I remember like the cutaways for Mike. I'm just like, okay, cool, see you later. And turn around and he's just standing there like...
Daggers, daggers in the
just,
back,
like, disappears. That was hilarious.
I actually had a lot of fun with that. But
Were they brother and sister?
Yes.
Yeah, they're twins. Yeah, they're twins.
It was a protective thing, okay?
Well, I'm not.
Thank you to Alicia, Andrew, Brandon, Caroline, Cameron, Daniel, Donnie, Amelia, Gwen, Ian, Junior the Hedgehog, Common J, Caitlin, Matthew, Megley, Mia T. Toon, Nerdy Disney, our friend Barney, Sawyer, Velveteen. Thank you to all of my Rainbow Line passengers. See you!